Hello everyone, my name is Chucky Prophet, and welcome back to my Attack on Titan retrospective. Now, after the end of the first season, there is a long 4-year lull, where no major continuation of the Attack on Titan story is released, because the anime had simply ran out of material within the manga. The manga obviously continued serializing in the background, but anime-only fans had virtually nothing to go off of during this time. And I believe it's this 4-year lull, even though it is understandable why they made the original decision to pause, and I don't think it was kind of a case of, the studio did this wrong. It does make sense why they made their decision, but I do think this 4-year lull is what caused a lot of the problems that we see in the misreading and mischaracterization of Attack on Titan today. But I'll get onto that in a later episode. Here, I just want to talk about the OVAs, spin-offs, and everything else that released within this period. The only major thing that I won't be talking about is Lost Girls, because that released just after the end of Season 2, and as such is more based on Season 2 content, so that will probably be included with that. Aside from that, let's get on with it, shall we? Ilse's Memoirs is a really strong and interesting little side story. The perfect use of an OVA, really. It communicates information about our characters really effectively, which is definitely not essential, but it is interesting in terms of recontextualizing them. The main example of this is Hanji, who is the main character of this OVA. Now, Hanji, as we know her just from the context of Season 1, is an extremely obsessed science and titan maniac who believes that anything is a worthy cost to be paid in exchange for greater scientific advancement. Now, this OVA fleshes that out and gives her a little bit of a character arc. She begins very much focused on her goal of capturing a titan alive so she can cut it up and study it. However, this is a goal that naturally causes a loss of human life. It's hard enough to kill a titan after all, so trying to capture one is considered outright madness by most of the Scout Brigade. However, it is still crucially an important aspect of winning the war on the Titans. Hanji just doesn't understand the right way to go about it, which is the compromise between understanding that scientific advancement and scientific research is important, yes, but it should not come at the expense of forgetting the lives of those who've gone before. And never forgetting, after all, that within the scientific process you stand on the shoulders of giants, and Hanji learns by the end of this that she should learn to respect all of those who put all of their effort into ensuring that her discoveries can become a reality. And it's just generally very nice for a character to be given a complete arc within an OVA like this. Ordinarily, and especially with the other two OVAs, an OVA is just sort of a side story that doesn't need to do anything with the characters involved, but this one actually bothers. The segments with Ilse are really nice foreshadowing, and they build up this sense of mystery and tension around the world perfectly, with this being the first mention that we ever get, I believe in canon, of the children of Ymir. It's such a cool hint for anyone like me who's never seen the specials before, and then you either see it for the first time on your first watch through and go, ooh, what's that about? Or you rediscover it like me after never having watched them and go, holy shit, that's fun foreshadowing for what comes next. My only real complaint is that generally I'd like a lot more stuff like this. This is a fascinating era of Attack on Titan's history to me. Just before Eren was discovered and the scouts were going out on hopeless missions, constantly being fucked over by environmental circumstances, and discovering the ruined world outside the wall. Another thing that I like about it is that even though it's called Ilse's Notebook, very little of the episode actually focuses on Ilse herself. We never really get an idea of this character beyond the fact that she noted everything down. And I think this is a very, very good structural choice. Choosing to focus the episode on someone else builds on with this theme of scientific discovery beginning to outweigh and almost render human loss of life unimportant by comparison if we're not careful. Solid 8 out of 10, I really enjoyed this, about as much as I can enjoy like a singular self-contained OVA story. The Torturous Curse of Youth is a bizarre little comedic episode based from Jean's perspective, and it's set just before the Trost attack. We get to meet his mum, and Pixis officiates a cooking competition between him and Sasha. The comedy here varies a lot between give me a decent chuckle to being very eh. It's essentially about Jean learning to be not such a dick to his family, which is a decent moral core we've seen done about 1,000 times. At the end of the day, it's just nice to see these characters having fun. My favourite part is definitely the completely reanimated opening made with Jean as all of the leading parts instead of Eren. It's a very fun level of committing to the bit of the episode. I also like when the super serious AOT music is used for shit like a cooking competition. The plot is also split between two hooks, Jean's stuff with his family and the cooking competition. Ultimately, I did feel like the cooking competition was the weaker part of the episode. Even though it is neat to see Pixis, it just felt very much like an afterthought comedically within the episode. It's very okay. I suppose it depends on your mileage on literally nothing interesting going on episodes and just fucking around. And I did feel that Jean's immense dickishness towards his family was a little bit out of character for him. I'd probably give it around a 6 out of 10. Distress is a pretty interesting OVA. When Krista is captured during a routine training exercise, the cadets of the 104th Cadet Corps must band together to save her without their ODM gear. Honestly, as most of the reviews of it say, it's just a better episode 3. It introduces all of these characters so much better and their motivations and their interlinking goals. It introduces Eren's rivalry with Jean a lot better. It introduces Marco as a character fantastically and sets up his arc with Jean, as he's originally the leader of this group but then needs to back down and let Jean and Eren take control. It also sets up the important moral which Eren won't learn, of working with others in order to achieve a desired goal. It also introduces themes of pushing ahead no matter what, whether or not fighting on or running away as cowardice, and has some really neat foreshadowing for later on, with Krista being a kidnapping target even at this point, and Eren's conversation with Marco. It's really nicely animated actually. There's some great fight choreography here that's kind of wasted on an OVA that I don't think many people watch. Overall, this is just a better episode 3, thematically, structurally, character-wise. This could have just been in the show itself. It would have set up the importance of Krista. It would have set up the importance of Marco a lot better. It would even have established members like Thomas and Mina Carolina, who don't matter, a hell of a lot better than episode 3 did, and give us way more of an emotional basis for caring about them. Yeah, just a solid 7 out of 10, with a few flaws in scripting and pacing, but overall really solid. I'm gonna go ahead and spoil everything here. No Regrets is by far my favourite OVA and probably my favourite spin-off of everything I've seen. I wish this era of the story could be expanded on more. Essentially, this OVA explains Levi's backstory, with the first part set entirely in the underground district underneath Walsina. This is a really interesting location. We get to see very little of it in the actual show, and I'm always a sucker for my dystopian underground cities. Honestly, I could watch an entire movie at least, just based on this location. I love the focus on the effects of not having sunlight and not having hope, on the populace down here. This episode is framed structurally with a flashback, flash forward kind of dynamic, where we see Levi at the beginning of the episode being chased around by some people with ODM gear, and we don't know what's going on. But then we flash back and get context for everything that's happening. I love the way that Levi's relationship with his little underground gang is built up. They're all pretty well realized characters, with Farlan being a talkative advisor type character who handles business for Levi, and Isabel as the rebellious kid looking for even a slice of freedom in the underground hellhole, and Levi being the usual stoic badass. I really enjoy the thematics here too, how sunlight is used as an analogue for personal freedom and hope. Those who lose their ability to walk because of the lack of sunlight lose their ability to be free, and are forever trapped within these slums, doomed to wander around, slowly losing what little bits of freedom they have left. It's a really evocative location, and I again, wish this was explored more. It's such a cool idea. The main antagonists of this episode are revealed to be the Scout Squad, who Levi has been put on some sort of job to interfere with. And I love how much the Scout Squad is bigged up in terms of competency at the end. They're a complete machine which disregards the escape tactics of Levi's gang put in place and catch them pretty easily. It also produces a rare moment of weakness and vulnerability for Levi, which does him good as an interesting character, I feel. There's some absolutely stunning moments of animation related to this, especially within the final chase. It's really cool that the Scout Squad are allowed to feel like the absolute badasses they should be in lore. This episode definitely didn't necessitate them, but wit cooked regardless. 8 out of 10 overall. I do have small issues with the structuring and framing of certain parts of the episode, but this was a really fun watch. No Regrets Part 2 is an absolute, uncompromising gut punch of an episode. It beautifully sets up both Levi and Owen's characters. I love that this takes its time to set up the actual politics of the army, and their hatred for what they perceive to be as poor, undisciplined scum climbing the ranks for no reason. Attack on Titan constantly addresses this air of prejudice and meaningless hyperfixation on discipline when unnecessary within the military, and how, when they get attacked by Titans, no matter how much discipline they had, they're just as dead. No matter how much discipline they had or how much they owned their position, they are all equally as dead. The episode also further strengthens the relationships between the 3 main members of Levi's gang, making them lovable and enjoyable characters in their own right, and furthering Levi's development by showing him finally opening up his stoic exterior and beginning to trust them, which is all build up for the inevitable tragic conclusion. Now, I need to flash back to episode 1 for a minute. In episode 1, we're given this ambiguous setup around a noble called Loblov, and his plan to have Levi and his gang do some sort of job for him. Now, originally when I watched the first episode, I was a little bit frustrated because there was no clear reveal or even hint to what the job was. And it felt like, without watching episode 2, that the plot thread of the job was not going to be continued. I'm happy to be proved wrong. And it's revealed that Loblov has this complex political intertwining with Irvin, where Irvin has stole a very incriminating document that would get Loblov in a lot of trouble, so he's hired Levi to get rid of the problem, to kill Irvin. And I like how it's left really ambiguous whether or not Loblov would have actually done anything to help Levi in exchange for the favor, or just screwed him over and left him to rot. I think it's most likely the latter, but it is an interesting piece of ambiguity that's never really resolved. I really love how small hints towards Shadiz's future trajectory are shown even during his tenure as leader of the Scouts. He plays second fiddle entirely to Irvin and is shocked by his "we must dedicate everything to the cause," abandoning even our noble ideals speech. It just proves that even right at the very beginning, Shadiz was never really willing to make the sacrifices necessary in order to achieve humanity's goals. But the other part of it is, does that make him a bad person? No, the episode is excellent at emotionally manipulating you. The fact that we go into this OVA knowing that these two characters likely won't survive plays into this beautiful sense of dramatic irony as we learn Levi slowly begin to trust them. No Regrets also reminded me hugely about why I love early AOT so much, and made me want even more of it, specifically focusing on Irvin's early scout campaigns into this unknown and hostile landscape. The final expedition and the deaths of both Isabella and Farlan are masterfully executed. There's this fantastic scene where Levi begins to trust them both enough, finally, to leave them alone. He regrets and questions his decision the whole way, the mist and the rain driving around him. It's a fantastic sequence where he's literally visually closed in and boxed off, doubting himself every step of the way and whether or not it was right. And then he's snapped into a moment of abject horror when he realizes the Titans have passed him on his way. He was too focused on worrying about what had happened and not thinking about his situation. Isabella and Farlan's deaths are, again, excellently played. It says something fantastic about the quality of these OVAs that we are able to go into them knowing that these characters will die, and for the reveal to still be so effective and gut-wrenching. Genuinely, this might be one of my favourite moments in the series, and I think it's very telling about Attack on Titan's stance on the military. There's no last stand, no fanfare or emotional death scene where they get to say goodbye. They're just gone. We're put entirely into Levi's shoes as there's just shock and abject despair, and that's ours too. Even though you can see it coming, the execution of the moment is both anticlimactic and a stark contrast to the prior hopeful optimism of the episode, and that makes it paradoxically so much more emotional. As I said, it's again building on these ideas of anti-militarism. There was no glorious death fighting the Titan. They died in a struggle no one saw, and perhaps they weren't even able to notice the Titan before it killed them, and at the end, all they were was meat, presented coldly and dispassionately by the series. It doesn't glorify the deaths of its characters. We get to see in grisly detail how both Isabella and Farlan went out. Levi's sheer rage, where he loses all sense of self as he slashes at the Titan blindly, is beautifully animated and starkly contrasted with this somber piano in the background. It's in equal parts really fucking cool and genuinely haunting. The single moment of hyper emotion works so well for Levi, because he's such a stoic character who doesn't emote that much, and we sympathize with him more because of that. We can feel the severity of the situation because he's written to be the way he is. The final conversation between Levi and Irvin wraps up the principal theme of No Regrets: decisions and regret. As Irvin himself says, if you begin to regret, you'll dull your future decisions, and then you'll let others make the choices for you. Then all that's left is for you to die. Nobody can foretell the future. Each decision you make holds meaning only by affecting the next decision. Actually, a really just superbly written quote that sums up the, I would say, essential main emotional theme of the series. This all links back to what Levi tells Eren later on in Season 1 in the forest, about there being no single right answer to a given solution, and that he should act according to his own conscience. Here, Levi makes a set of decisions given very limited information, and they cost him the only family he ever had. He begins to hate himself for making those decisions, obsessing over why he left his squad unprotected, but Irvin snaps him right back out of it. Regret does nothing but paralyze us and prevents us from learning from our past mistakes in order to inform our next decisions. It's a theme central to both the Survey Corps characters and to Attack on Titan as a whole. Eren's regret over being unable to save his mother and the scout squad and countless others is what fuels his turn to genocidal maniac. He believes that only by taking the most extreme path and doing everything on his own can he successfully save everyone. And he wants to effectively remove chance as a factor by killing everyone that isn't an Eldian. And also by assuring that time itself bends to his will. The one thing that Eren can't stand, his central flaw, and the fuel that keeps the cycle of violence sustained, is the fear of uncertainty. What if every decision I make is wrong? What if my enemy attacks first? It's this central fear of making the wrong decision and then regretting it afterwards that drives every bad decision in Attack on Titan. From King Fritz, to Willy Tybur, to Eren Yeager. And the answer to it is found here in this little OVA. Regret and fear of regret does nothing but paralyze your decisions further, and takes you down the path of blaming others rather than remedying your own mistakes. And we see this with the realization and resolution that Levi comes to after his talk with Irvin, and why he makes the decision to follow him. Also, just on a side note, it's such a really nice detail of the two doves flying above Levi in the ending as he rides outside the walls. Just, oh, that's good stuff. That's good direction. 9 out of 10. I just wish there was, again, more of this, but a bit more delving into the politics of Attack on Titan's world would be really interesting to me. And now I'm about to give you tonal whiplash as we talk about Attack on Titan Junior High, the first of the spin-offs. Originally when I planned this script, I was just gonna watch the OVAs, but I thought, hey, I'll make it a little bit more fun. I'll check out basically everything that's related to Attack on Titan, including all of the weird spin-offs. And I'm really glad I did. Attack on Titan Junior High is just a nice little gag parody show that sees the AOT cast reimagined as junior high school students at Attack Junior High, where Titans eat lunches instead of people. Junior High's comedy stems from two main sources: references to the OG material repackaged and reimagined into wacky gags, and just straight up oddball weird. Now, comedy is very obviously difficult to criticize somewhat because it's so subjective, but this show was definitely filled with more hits than misses for me. Particularly the reference comedy absolutely slaps when it lands well, especially later on with absolute bangers like episode 8 and 9. And I really love, and a particular running joke I enjoy, is the use of the original score to undercut some of these dumb, silly moments with just blaring AOT tracks. The show even references more than just at Season 1 stuff, like Ilse's notebook, Bertolt and Reiner's betrayal, and even references Frida fucking Rice of all things. 2 whole seasons, and about 3 whole years before she became relevant in the main anime, which is really cool. Now, I think there's an inherent difficulty with a parody show like this of differentiating itself enough from the original to be good in its own right, other than just a reference machine. And I think it is, honestly. Attack on Titan Junior High reinvents and rewrites so many of the characters that they're essentially completely different, and in most cases, honestly more enjoyable, especially for some of the side characters, because they're given so much more attention and love here. Ironically, the parts that are Eren, Mikasa, and Armin specifically focused are weaker compared to things that are focused on characters like Sasha, Jean, Bertolt, and Annie. It does an excellent job of endearing you to these parodied versions of the characters, with some like Sasha and Connie just being much more enjoyable than their base forms, likely because putting the gag characters in a gag manga automatically makes them more appealing. Episode quality doesn't vary that wildly. Most of the setups for each episode function on very simple tropes being inverted and messed with, plus the whole "but it's with AOT characters" thing. Some, like episode 6, the episode where Jean accidentally falls in love with a Titan, do this really well. Others, like the Cleaning Squad episode, are much less charming. Even in its worst episodes though, the short 10 to 15 minute length means that any setup you find unfunny is quickly gone, and you can move on to the next, probably better episode. It's rare for things to make me laugh out loud alone when I watch them. I usually tend to just sort of chuckle internally, but the Reiner infinite staircase gag genuinely gave me a good laugh, which is high praise. Ironically though, the simple comedic presence of Titans but they eat school lunches is really badly undercooked in terms of how much it could be played around with, both comedically and in terms of adding a general plot to the show. The Titans generally just feel like an inclusion added out of necessity rather than a desire to play around with them sometimes. This is a solid 7 out of 10. I wasn't expecting to enjoy this nearly as much as I did, and would genuinely recommend it to any fan of the show who just needs a bit of a good time after post-AOT misery. Before the Fall is a spin-off comic, which chronicles the development of the ODM gear, the main method through which Titans are fought. It is, again, a really interesting time period to set a story, explaining a natural curiosity within Attack on Titan's world through the lens of some pretty cool characters. And it does bring back that classic AOT feeling with how much threat the basic Titans are here, as well as including some really fun background political machinations and focusing on the human backdrop of those who live within the walls, including infighting between rival MP factions, the political turmoil following the formation of the Scouts, and Titan worshipping cultists. Our main character is Kuklo, a human born from the corpse of a woman that a Titan has eaten. He was regurgitated and is forced to live in a world that despises him, because everyone believes that he's a Titan. Because of course, many rich nobles haven't even seen one. He's taken in by the rich Inocencio family, and the heir to the family, Zavi, brutally beats him to claim a sense of dominance over the Titans. Meanwhile, Kuklo forms a strong friendship with Charles, Zavi's sister. One night, Titan-worshipping cultists break into the Inocencio home, forcing Charles and Kuklo. With this setup, you'd expect a pretty standard revenge plot, with an MC similar to Eren, who desperately wants to defeat all the Titans and claim revenge on Zavi for the beatings on him, right? Well, that's the first interesting point. Kuklo isn't motivated by revenge, he's motivated by a desire to know who he is, and upon discovering who he is, he's motivated by a desire to protect those around him, and a genuine love for the world and the people in it. It's a refreshing twist which makes him a really fun character to follow, with a childlike innocence that matures in fun ways over the course of the story. My biggest point of praise is actually how different BTF manages to feel, while keeping the core of what makes Attack on Titan works intact, with lots of interesting commentary on the social and political issues that base Attack on Titan focuses on. Kuklo's rivalry with Zavi is similarly very interesting. He's built up as an absolute bastard, but gradually revealed to be surprisingly complex and well layered to the point where you don't really see him as an antagonist. A really well put together character in general. Charles is similarly pretty good, specifically in terms of how she evolves over the course of the story, but I do have issues with her that tie into my main issues with the story. My main problem is pacing. There's a point at about 2/3 in where plot events just start happening. No build up, no fanfare, plot just begins to focus on pretty unimportant events while missing out on other central plot points. The other problem is concept focus. It introduces really cool concepts like the Titan cult, but they get no focus. It's such a cool idea, and it's a shame. It also, ironically enough, has a pretty similar problem to Attack on Titan with character economy. Way too many characters with next to no death or good character cycling to balance the cast, especially late on in the manga where I've already mentioned that problem comes in. It feels like it ends very abruptly, and somewhat unsatisfyingly thanks to the pacing, even though it is a natural endpoint. Art-wise, it's fairly rough early on, like Isayama, but comes into its own with really good fight choreography at some points, and some decent enough wide panels. I also love the difference in how this artist actually draws the Titans. When Isayama draws them most of the time, they are slightly bigger and slightly more exaggerated people, which I think works well in a certain sense to make them more unsettling. Making them just humanoid mockeries of humanity is really cool. But I also like how this one gives each individual Titan more of a personality and makes them more bestial. It just results in some really fucking cool designs. Honestly, if you're a fan and you haven't read this yet, get on it. It's a pretty damn good time. Hey, you know what isn't a good time though? The Attack on Titan movie. Oh boy, the Attack on Titan movie was a watch and a half. I'd heard bad things going on, but I didn't realize how absolutely doo-doo water this movie was going to turn out to be. Taking the place of base Attack on Titan's medieval setting, in the movie we're in post-apocalyptic modern-day Japan. World building is incredibly consistent here, particularly the level of technology this society has. They have cannons in some areas to fully functional armored cars, and yeah, you can argue that there'll be some disparity in what they can salvage and what they can't, but it's not like how they don't understand how these things work. In Attack on Titan, there is a very well established level of technology. We're in kind of the Renaissance bordering on the Industrial Revolution era in Attack on Titan. We have cannons, and we have essentially gas-propelled grappling hook gear. Simple, all of it makes sense within the technology context of the world that has been set up, and none of it feels wildly out of place. But Attack on Titan, the movie, jumps around so much between cannons, armored cars, assault rifles, and it never establishes properly what the level of technology is, because they plan to seal the wall by using fucking Semtex plastic explosives to knock giant rocks down and seal Wall Maria again. Which, yeah, cool, great plan, but why are you still using cannons to defend your settlements? I guess it's supposed to go to this theme of the inefficiency and unpreparedness of the military, but that just doesn't make sense to me. I feel like that's a bit too over the top in a world where you could, literally have access to anti-tank cannons. I feel like if you're going to do modern day Attack on Titan, at least, do modern day Attack on Titan. Explore all of the cool avenues and niches for modern day technology usage to be shown up against the Titans. Now, a lot of complaints do stem from a bad adaptation of the source material, and I could go on all day about that, but instead I'd rather just talk about the fact that it's kind of a bad movie in general. The plot is completely all over the place. Scenes and events happen with very little connective tissue. The pacing is absolute dog water. To make you understand where we're kind of at, the first 40 minutes of the movie is the first episode of the anime, stretched out massively. And then the pacing is slowed down even further during the cadet training portion of the movie, where we spend ages not really learning anything about these characters, and then it will randomly just speed up and events will happen lightning fast with no real build-up or gravitas given to any of the reveals that are made. There is, as I've already mentioned, absolutely no world consistency or common establishment of what the fuck is going on with the level of technology. It seems to half understand AOT's anti-authoritarian themes, at least, which is nice. They set up Kubal as this evil, authoritative military figure who's gonna cause some great form of trouble in the next movie. There are really weird changes made to certain Attack on Titan characters as well. Like, Eren's mum is no longer eaten, and dies when he's a baby. He is no longer the adoptive brother of Mikasa, and they are instead just childhood friends. Basically, he has no reason to do anything. He has essentially every core of base Eren's character stripped away, and instead of replacing it with something new and interesting, the movie doesn't. He's a completely impotent character whose transformation into Big Titan makes us feel nothing because there is no character build-up. Mikasa does not give a single fuck about Eren for most of the story, which, yeah, sure, fine, but build something more interesting for Mikasa. Instead of being gifted because of her heritage, as we know from later on in the series, in the movie she's saved by the guy who's supposed to be Captain Levi, and then just decides not to get back into contact with Eren again. It's a very weird plot beat, where she just kind of goes, you left me to die, in a scenario where Eren literally had no choice but to leave her to die and was trying to get back to her, but nope, she's still just like, you left me to die, I'm not going to get back in contact with you ever again. It's just strange and poorly written. And then she has a weirdly sexual relationship with Shikishima, which, okay, sure, fine, that's a direction that you could take those characters. I mean, honestly, in general, the entirety of the Attack on Titan movie gets weirdly sexual at the midpoint. If you've ever decided that you wanted a version of Attack on Titan where Eren gets sexually assaulted midway through, come watch this! It's great, it's fun, it's fantastic. You'll love it. I'm not really going to talk about Armin because he's not really a character. I can't muster up anything to say about the rest of the cast. They are very much there and are kind of just flanderized versions of the base characters from the series, where one trait of them is taken and hyper-exaggerated until it just doesn't even feel like a real written character anymore. But I'll get off that. Visually, even things like the ODM gear just go completely limp. The choreography is terrible, as when they actually attempt to slice into a Titan, it's just this kind of wet fish slapping noise, and then a chunk of meat explodes off the Titan, with no real sense of impact or style behind anything. Titans are decently done, granted. They're really fucking horrifying in this movie, actually. Instead of how they are in the anime, where their feasting seems more intent to murder, where they grab someone, they like bite them in half, and then they'll throw the body away, or they'll tear the body in half. In this, it's just like straight up gluttony. And they'll grab people, and like different Titans will be fighting each other, vying for a single piece of human meat. It feels like they're horrifying, voracious, giant cannibals in this version. And I really do like this interpretation of the Titans. I just wish it was in a better context. And following on from that, the movie just makes certain weird choices with designs that make no sense. Like the fucking baby Titan, like, huh? Anyway, I'm sure all of this will be resolved in movie 2, but the first Attack on Titan movie literally sucked the soul directly right out of my body. I had zero fun watching it, and do not wish to repeat that experience again. It is one of the very, very, very rare times that a piece of bad media has broken me. I mean, who knows, maybe I'll get drunk one night and decide, hey, I feel like blowing my own brains out by watching the second part of the Attack on Titan movie series, so maybe you'll get an extra added on review in Attack on Titan Season 2 Retrospective. Anyway, this is pretty much every single OVA and spin-off that I watched. I played the game as well, Attack on Titan Wings of Freedom. That was pretty damn good. I didn't make a segment about it because I didn't really have that much to say other than just like, yeah, it's a pretty solid game with some pretty solid mechanics. I recommend it if you're a fan of the series. So yeah, that's everything. A real smattering of inconsistent content, some of it really, really good, some of it but I enjoy doing this, and it's interesting to go back and watch all this content I haven't really checked out before. And there are definitely some parts that I would consider mandatory for a more current rewatch. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of little side episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.